Hey there, my friend. I'm Abby, creator and owner at Abbi Collections. I am going to be teaching you how to create your very own photo adventure map with the help of your Cricut machine. So real quick, here is a list of the supplies that you're going to see me feature in this video. So I am using a Cricut Maker 3. You can use any of the current full-size Cricut machines. That would be the Explore 2, Explore 3, Maker, Maker 3. Any of those are going to work fine, but it has to be compatible with Print and Cut, which is the only reason why you can't use the Joy machine. You're also going to want some matboard. I'm using a 16 by 20 matboard in my main example here. You can get them in a variety of sizes. You'll also need to have permanent vinyl and transfer tape. You'll need printable vinyl. I like to use the Cricut brand, but there's other printable vinyls out there that can work as well. You'll need to have an inkjet printer, no special one, just a basic inkjet printer is fine. You'll need a 12 by 12 Cricut mat, a 12 by 24 inch Cricut mat, that's the really long one. You'll need photos of your choice, so pick out your travel photos of choice. And then you'll need a picture frame, or you could also opt to use a wood sign. You'll need a weeding tool, and you'll need a Cricut scraper tool. And you may also want to have some parchment paper on hand, because I'm going to show you a trick on how you can center things up with a little bit more ease when you're applying your vinyl. All right, so let's go over the design space setup you're going to need to know in order to complete this project. There's a lot of good tips that I'm going to give you in here that are very applicable across the board to a lot of projects in design space. So I hope you will find this helpful, even if you modify this concept in some other way for yourself. So first, let me talk about the files that I have made for this project. Obviously, there are loads of places to go all over the world, so I couldn't possibly create every country, state. That would be extremely hard. But what I did decide to do is I am in the United States, so I created a US map version of this. I did create Canada as well, and I have a special note about that one in a minute. And then I created sort of these mountain range options here. So if you're someone who likes to, do travel in mountain areas, then you can have sort of these abstract mountains for your photos. And then I did a larger design here, where I included just some world landmarks, just a few that are easily recognizable. And then all of these little slots here are for your photos that you'll clip into that, and we'll go over all of that in this design space setup. You could, of course, change out any phrase that you see here on my screen. I'm including these phrases in the designs, but if you want to type out your own using the text tool in Design Space or find another SVG altogether to incorporate, then that's always an option for you. So as I said a minute ago, you're going to see a United States file, and I also decided to do Canada as well, because we get a lot of folks from Canada. One note about Canada, and I tried my best, Canada comes with a lot of little islands, and that can make things very challenging for an SVG. So I did have to strip away a few of the teeny tiny details because it just wasn't possible to work with in this scenario. So I tried to keep as much of the larger stuff as I could. With the Canadian file here, you are not going to get a frame border like I'm going to be showing with the US, because again, there were so many small little points and islands that when I tried to create the frame border in my design software, it just distorted everything so badly. Those are your file options here. And with the World Traveler one, I also include these little banners underneath that if you want to either handwrite or type out something here in Design Space and then apply with vinyl, you could put the location that you're at under the photo. You could also delete those. So if you don't want them, just delete them. So I tried to give a lot of versatility, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want there. Now, if you're somewhere else and you have another country in mind that you want to incorporate, then I would suggest going to maybe like a stock photo site like iStock, or even looking in Cricut Access Images or other SVG places that you typically go, and look for that particular country for yourself as an SVG, and then you can clip a photo in like I'm going to show you here. So I want to show you just how to upload a file real quick, just in case you're not familiar. I always like to show that for our beginners. To upload any of these SVGs, you're going to visit the design panel over here to your left-hand side, and you're going to look for the upload button. So we're going to click on that upload button. And then we're going to click upload image again, and we're going to browse our computer to bring that file in. So wherever you've downloaded this file, if you've put it on your desktop in a separate folder, your downloads folder, wherever that is, you want to navigate there, and then you want to bring the file in. Okay, so here is one of my files. I'm going to click open, and it's going to open here in Cricut Design Space. It'll give us a preview, and I'll click upload. It's going to drop it under recent uploads, and then you're just going to want to select it and click add to canvas. Okay, there we go. So we've brought the file in. So the most important thing here is first to decide on your sizing and to set yourself up a guide for your particular size, whether it be picture frame or wood sign. You need to set that before we start doing anything with photos. Okay, so I want to go over that here. So using this one that I just brought in as an example here, let me zoom in a little. Right now, the current size of this file is 9 by almost 6 inches. You can also see it up here at the top of the edit bar where my mouse is circling. Now, I want you to think about what are you going to be placing this on. If you're going to follow along with me where I'm placing this onto matboard, I am using a 16 by 20 frame that holds a 16 by 20 matboard. So that is what I'm going to keep in mind as I'm scaling this. If you're doing this a little bit larger or a little bit smaller, then just adjust that accordingly. Now, I will say for this project, unless you're dealing with the mountain ones over here, I do not recommend going very small. It is not meant to be a super small frame or a super small project. It's just not going to cut out and look very well in the end. So that's why I went for this 16 by 20. And that allows me to still fit within the parameters of what my Cricut machine can cut, but it gives it enough size that we're not ending up with like tears in our cuts and all those struggles. So I know that I'm going to have a mat board of 16 by 20. I'm going to come over to my shapes tool here, and I'm going to grab just a square, and it's free, so it's okay if you don't have Cricut access, just grab the free square. We're going to come up to the top edit bar here. Look for the little lock icon. It's super tiny, but look for the lock icon, and you want to make sure it's unlocked. So just click it to unlock it. And then I'm going to set this to the size of my mat board in my case. If you're doing like a sign, then like a wood sign, then you would follow suit as well. So it's going to be 16 inches wide, or excuse me, actually it's going to be 20 inches because I'm turning it landscape. So 20 inches wide by 16 inches tall. So that is the size of my mat board. I'm going to relock that little lock icon up there. And then with this rectangle selected, I'm going to go over to operation, and I'm going to change this to guide. So guides are really helpful because one, they allow you to get perspective on your project, which is what we need here. And they never cut out when you go to the cut screen. So you don't even have to hide them or delete them. They just automatically hide themselves. It's super handy. So I'm going to pull this guide down here. And right now this guide is the topmost layer because we see it here at the top of the layers panel. So if I try to click on my my little map underneath, it just keeps selecting this guide. So we're going to be doing some things with the arrange tool in here. So we'll just go ahead and introduce that now. With your guide selected, if that happens, just click the arrange tool at the top and send it to the back. Then click off and you'll be able to click on our map here in this example. So now I'm going to go ahead and scale this up. Using this as a guide, knowing that my mat board is going to be 16 by 20. You want there to be a little grace on all the sides here. You don't want it to, you know, be butting up right against the edges. That's never good. And if you want to ungroup this at any time to adjust things, which I do recommend, you can ungroup at the top of the layers panel or just right click and you have these options as well. Ungroup. So I did make Alaska and Hawaii separate from everything else, so you can adjust those or eliminate them if you wish to do so. Okay, so moving on now to the fun part of bringing in our personal images and clipping them into these shapes. And the same is going to apply to everything else you see here on my screen. Now, the one difference is going to be Canada. Like I mentioned, because of the little islands and stuff, it's a little tricky. So I couldn't create the frame for Canada no matter how hard I tried because it just looked really deformed and it didn't look well at all. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to be using this to place onto your mat board exactly as it is here in whatever color vinyl you want. And then you're going to create a duplicate copy of Canada using the duplicate button. And then you're going to follow suit with clipping all of your photos into these shapes and sticking them on top of as you build out your Canadian travel map, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and bring in some photos. Let's go back to that upload button, just as we did before. And I'm gonna click on upload image again, just like before, and I'm gonna browse my computer, and this time I'm gonna bring in a photo. So a photo would be a photo you took on your phone or a camera. A JPEG or a PNG image format is typically what a photo is going to be. So I'm going to browse my computer and I'm going to bring a photo in. So here's some photo options I have. We're going to use this photo here. It's blue bonnets in Texas, and I think it's a really pretty photo. So all I've done there is clicked and opened it in Design Space just as we did before. But because this is a PNG image base or a JPEG, they both behave the same way, it's going to ask us some different questions here. Make sure you select complex, always select complex, and then click continue. And the reason we select complex is because if we select simple, it strips away all those beautiful details. So definitely select complex and click continue. There's nothing you need to do on this screen, just apply and continue and go to the next screen. You want to select the pretty print and cut image and then click upload. And now the photo we just uploaded is available under our recent uploads, and we can click to add it to our canvas. So I'm going to bring this photo over here, and this is my Texas photo. This is what I want to go into the state of Texas. So let me zoom in down here. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select our states here. So they're going to be grouped together like this. And what you want to do is with those selected, you want to ungroup it. You can do that in the layers panel, or you can right click and find the ungroup button as well. Now each state can be selected separately. See that there? We can select each state separately. So what we need to do is we need to pull down Texas, and we need to, it's falling behind our photo here, right? So we need to get a better visual of what that's going to actually, how that's going to be positioned. So I'm going to bring Texas forward here by clicking the arrange tool and bringing it to the front. Now this photo's got quite a bit of room around it, so I'm going to select the photo and shrink it down here so I can capture more of what's inside. And then I'll click and drag over both Texas and the photo, okay? So get your frame of reference of where you want the focal point to be for that particular state. You might have to get creative with which photos you use where based on the shape of the state. But once you get that, scale it down, click and drag over both. Then you're going to use the slice tool in the bottom of the panel, bottom of the layers panel to your right-hand side. What this is going to do is it's going to punch out, or in essence clip, our photo into the shape of Texas. So we're going to start pulling this apart. It's kind of like a cookie cutter process. So here's our original piece, which we can get rid of at this point in time. And then here's our original photo. So I'm just going to delete those. I really don't need them at this time. And then we have Texas now with our pretty photo clipped in it. And we can move it back over here just to get a visual of what that's going to look like. And then we're going to repeat that process for any states. So the same would apply to our little mountain range over here, our little squares up here. You would do the exact same thing no matter which of these files you are using. So don't forget to save that project. As I've mentioned, that's super important so that as you travel to more places, you can come back and grab these empty state pieces and clip your photos in. So I'm going to click on the Make It button to go to the cut screen. I am using the Maker 3, so it's asking me if I'm cutting on a mat or not, but you are going to be cutting on a mat no matter what. So I'm just going to hit continue to connect to my Cricut machine. And we're going to send these to our printer here. And then we're also going to cut these out in vinyl. So for me, I'm going to select the vinyl here first, and then I'm going to find the vinyl that is relevant to me. I was using a smart vinyl because I wanted to cut without a mat. So I was using the Smart Vinyl Metallic, I believe, and I'm gonna click done. And now we're gonna load our Cricut machine and we're going to cut out this frame in vinyl as well as the phrase of your choice that you put at the top. All right, so I am loading up my Smart Vinyl here. Now, if you're not using Smart Vinyl and you're using a different machine, it's totally fine. Just put your vinyl onto your 12 by 24 inch mat. Otherwise, you can use Smart Vinyl and cut without a mat if you have the Explore 3 or the Maker 3, okay? So that's why you're seeing me feature this without a mat here, but either can work. So my Cricut is just measuring my material here, and then it's gonna go ahead and cut this out. I'm only using the fine point blade for this project. That's what comes with all of the Cricut machines. Okay, so my cut for the frame of the US is done here, and I'm going to weed this. I grabbed one of my Cricut mats and put the vinyl onto it on one side because the liner was really trying to roll on me, and it kind of helps stabilize the process of weeding if you can sort of flatten that liner down as we're getting that vinyl off there. So all we're gonna do is weed off all of this excess here, just like that. And then you're gonna go through and you're just going to weed out the states, which is where we're gonna put our photos in as we fill out our map. All right, so I've got the essence of that weeded there, and now I'm going to work on applying that transfer tape. So my first step here is I'm gonna trim off Alaska and Hawaii because I wanna be able to control putting that on separately and making sure I'm getting it just right. I've cut a long piece of transfer tape here to make sure it will completely cover my design, and I'm gonna kind of let it fall right into the center there and then completely fan out over the rest of the design there and press it down. I'm just gonna start with my hands, and then I'll grab my Cricut scraper tool and I'll go over it to burnish the design. Well, we're gonna burnish it on the front first, and then we're gonna flip the whole thing over and burnish it on the back. Burnish is just a fancy term for using our Cricut scraper to rub the design onto the transfer tape, which is what you're seeing me do here. All right, so once we get that good and burnished on the front and the back of the design, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start peeling the liner off. Now I'm using Smart Vinyl, so those liners are incredibly thick. If you struggle with getting it to release at all, then see as I am pressing with my thumb here, wherever it's clinging to that liner, press, crease, and roll away, and that will help release it onto the transfer tape and get it to release from that liner. Now for my fun little trick on how to help yourself with placement. So I love to have parchment paper in my craft room because it's really helpful for layering vinyl as well as placing vinyl onto things. I'm going to grab a large piece of parchment paper here. And parchment paper is fairly translucent, so you can kind of see through it. And I'm going to take my main design here that is already put onto my transfer tape, and I'm gonna place it so that the majority of it is on the parchment paper. So why am I doing this? I'm doing this because it's giving me a chance to get perspective on where everything needs to fit before I press anything down. Now, once I'm happy with the location of my item, I'm going to press some of that overhanging transfer tape you see to my right-hand side here. I just pressed that down to the mat board, lifted the design, but it's held in place by that little area that we pressed down, and then let the design fall right back into place. And now we have saved that alignment, basically, that placement, by using that parchment paper. And it gave us what we needed to figure out where we needed to shift things around. Go to town burnishing your design, like I'm doing here, and then we're gonna lift the transfer tape away. Take your time on this part. I'm using matboard here, like I said. I haven't had any issues with it lifting or tearing the matboard, and I will make sure I include in the supply resources for this project what transfer tape I'm using if you want to use the brand I'm using, but I've not had any issues with that in general. Now, ideally I would cut this phrase out on a 12 by 24 inch mat so that it was all in perfect alignment and I didn't have to piece it together. However, I ran out of the vinyl I needed, so I had to get creative and put these onto a smaller surface area so I could get all these words cut out in the same color of vinyl that I wanted to use. So that's why you're seeing me weed it in this position that it's been cut out in. I'm going to trim apart the words let the at the bottom and then leave journey begin on its own section, because let the needs to go in front of journey begin. And I'm going to trim off the excess piece of the liner there, and then I'm going to grab my Cricut mat and I'm going to place the word let the at the top of my Cricut mat, so I know it's sitting on there nice and straight, the top left corner. And I'm going to do the same thing with the word journey, the next section basically. I'm going to place it right up against and use that Cricut mat sort of as a guide of alignment. And then we'll place all of our transfer tape down on top of it exactly as it is, so we get it into that nice straight single line position that we ideally want it in to transfer it onto our mat board, so we're not trying to piece it together on the mat board and then realizing that we get it crooked. So all of my transfer tape is now on top of both of these liners, and I'm just going to lift it up from the mat now and remove these two separate liners from the back. So I'm going to peel that liner away here, both those liners away, so we can place this onto the mat board. All right, so you can also use that parchment paper trick here again. I've just cut a small piece at the top, and I'm going to grab my phrase and place it down on top of that parchment paper because I want to be able to shift things around and get an idea of where I want it to be. And then with a little bit of transfer tape overhang right along the top, once I'm happy with that location, I'm going to press that down with my finger. I'm going to lift the design and pull out that parchment paper, saving that position, let it fall right back into place, and now we can go ahead and burnish it onto our mat board. And we are happy with that position because we were able to shift things around with that parchment paper before making anything permanent. Now for the print and cut part here, when we need to print those sheets out in printable vinyl, you're gonna click send to printer. It's super important that you do this through Cricut Design Space, okay? If you do not do this through Cricut Design Space, there will be no registration marks or box on your screen. That's the black you're seeing here around our design. And Cricut will have no way of knowing where to cut on the mat accurately, okay? So that's super important that you print through Design Space. Another note here, if you've never calibrated your Cricut machine for print and cut, you want to do that before you actually try and go through this process. You can find help articles on Cricut for calibration, or you can go to my blog, abbykirstencollections.com, and just type in print and cut, and I have a whole calibration tutorial on there for you that can help you with that. Hey, Abby from the future here. Real quick, I just wanted to interject this little amendment to this tutorial here. If you are watching this and you notice that your screen looks like this with these four corners of black here rather than a full black registration box, it doesn't mean you're in the wrong place or you've done anything wrong. It just means you are now in the newest version of print and cut that Cricut Design Space released in 2023, February of 2023. They started beta testing it then. You may not see this if you haven't gotten a live update yet, but if you've switched over to beta or you are much further down the road, then you may see this style of a registration box here. Everything else in this tutorial works exactly the same way. Just know that they've updated the look of the registration marks here on your print and cut project page. Okay, back to the tutorial. So I'm selecting my printer of choice here. Make sure you leave on the add bleed. That guarantees that there will be edge to edge color and no little weird white borders going around, okay? All right, so my designs are printing out on my printer through Cricut Design Space. So we've got that ready there. And we're gonna be taking these over to our Cricut to put them onto our mat so that Cricut can cut them out. This is my printable vinyl here that I am using. So here is my printable vinyl ready to go. I'm gonna place it onto the top corner of my mat. I'm gonna use my brayer tool here to push the material to the mat. A brayer is not necessarily required, but it is helpful if you have that tool in hand or are interested in it. That is what I'm using here. It gets that material pressed to the mat nicely. And I'm just gonna go ahead and load this onto my Cricut machine. Cricut is gonna first scan this so that it can determine where those registration marks are. And that way Cricut knows how to cut in the precise location that we need it to. I am using the printable vinyl setting for this. If you are using a different type of printable vinyl or sticker paper, you may want to consult doing some test cuts before getting to this point. Okay, so my printable vinyl is done. I'm gonna peel my mat away from my material to help eliminate the curling. I'm gonna do the next one here. And then it's gonna be time to place our photos onto our photo adventure map. All right, so here's the super exciting and satisfying part of all of our work. I am grabbing one of my pictures here and I'm placing it onto my mat board. Now don't be afraid, just take your time and get it lined up. That guide is there to help you with our little outline that we have here. So how fun is this? We can now continue to add photos to our photo adventure map as we travel to new places. And this is just one example of how we could do it using the US map. But of course, there's loads more places you could apply this concept to. So I'm gonna put my mat board right into my 16 by 20 frame. And it's got a plexiglass cover on it there. So it's gonna protect all of that as well, which is really great for a project like this. I'm gonna close up the back of my frame, and to reveal our final result, here's what our photo adventure map looks like. I think this turned out really well. It took me quite a few tries to get the process down that I thought would be simple enough for everyone to understand. I know there's a few steps to this, but it's one of those extra special projects that you just don't see every day. Here's just a brief look at the mountain range one that I did. Here's what the mountain range looks like and one of our phrases as well. And here's another one I did, which you can swap out your mat boards as well, and you can sort of change it out from time to time if you wanted to. You can make them seasonal or something like that. So that could be really fun. Make sure you visit the link below this video so you can download all of these templates and many more on abbykirstencollections.com. I will see you all there. Bye for now.